All right. Okay, welcome to Intro to Technology. And let's just jump right in. So who am I? I run Tanuki Tech, our enablement program, and I'm really excited about it. The reason why I came to GitLab is so that I could help the people here. And that's why I created Tanuki Tech, and that's why I pump out so much content. All right, so the agenda for today in terms of our section is just brief onboarding. We'll talk about the tech industry as well. And the reason why this is really important is because this is, in terms of just like engaging with our customers, it's super important to understand their background and what they care about and the industry fundamentally that they're in. We'll understand how digital businesses work. Ultimately, this is what our decision makers and the people that we talk to care about. And we'll talk about different components of the technology industry. So obviously it's a vast industry, and Red Hat had to deal with data center. We'll talk about which components in general that GitLab has to deal with, and finally where GitLab fits in. I won't make y'all do the homework. If y'all want to do the homework, you can. Okay, cool. So this is something that kind of surprises people, especially people who've been in tech for a while, but logistically speaking, and from like basically every single angle, the technology industry is the hottest industry in the world. And I can make that statement and people sort of like pause for a second and they say like, well, I got friends in finance that make more money than I do, right? Like, how do you actually qualify this? Well, on company valuations. So y'all have stock, y'all have options here. This is just a quick stat. So the US economy as a whole, in terms of their stocks, are up 49% over the last 5 years. But if you just invested in all of our tech stocks, you'd be up 155% over that same time period. So we're talking about literally 3 times the increase in valuation compared to the US economy as a whole. Technology companies are some of the fastest growing. I don't know if y'all read the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but tech stocks make up like 40% of all of the articles that are being pumped out. So Amazon, Uber, Zoom, Amazon's growing 30% year over year. Zoom's growing like 300% year over year. And jobs in technology are some of the highest paying. So how do I substantiate that? This chart is a little bit old. I got it from 2017, but this is median employee salary for US companies. And as you can see, the top 4 are all tech companies. You have to go to number 5 to get something that's outside of technology. And out of the top 7, 6 out of the top 7 are tech companies. And so, it's substantiated by employee salaries, it's substantiated by company valuations. This is something that kind of surprises a lot of people. For you to go into finance, the first one is Goldman Sachs, and it's literally around number 10. So you're in a great industry. It's an industry that's growing rapidly, and it's one that's super promising. All right, and then I make some of these claims, and then the first thing that people ask is like, why, right? What's so special about the tech industry? And the reason why is because almost all innovation comes from technology these days. So if you just think about logistics, digital transformations come with Amazon. If you think about communication, Zoom has fundamentally changed how we interact. We have like a completely remote company. That wasn't possible like 10 years ago. In terms of dating, around 50% of all marriages in the United States start online. This is just how even our culture and our society is being changed by technology. And obviously, if you've driven any of the newer Tesla models, then they have their own like autonomous driver modes, right? And this is something that's going to happen. And once this finally gets approved legally, then you can bet a lot of money that like they're going to have a huge market share because they're going to be one of the first companies to really do this well. All right, so digital transformation is enabled by technology. And then the second point is something that a lot of people don't super think about, but it's really, really important. The tech industry is inherently massively scalable and has low barriers to entry. And that's part of the reason why it can grow so quickly. What I mean by massively scalable is if I have some sort of website like YouTube or something like that, then I get 20 guys and I develop this website. And the amount of like, if it's super, super popular and it goes viral, like, like think Facebook in its infancy, then I don't need a huge number of people to, scale up the website. Once it's built, it just can support like a huge number of users, right? So contrast that to, I have a friend who's building out his own like housing company right now. What he does is he does housing remodeling. So he's got 4 guys that work. If he works really, really hard, he can hire 2 more people. Then he has to get new clients, and then he has to get new equipment. And then, so it would take him 5, 10, 20 years to be able to like really increase his size versus like, if you think about Facebook literally was invented and within 5 years had like 50% of all of like the social community market space. So tech is inherently massively scalable. You don't need a lot of people and a lot of capital to scale it up quickly, and it has low barriers to entry. So what do I mean by that? If I wanted to go start a consulting company that are like banking company, then ultimately I have to go work for someone else, go up the ladder, get promoted a bunch of times. Then once I have a bunch of visibility, then maybe I can spin off and do my own thing. And then that would take maybe like 15, 20 years, right? Because I got to attract investors, I got to attract like clients and things like that. But people right out of college drop out and make their own tech companies. I have friends in high school that I played video games with, and they literally, this one guy is the CTO of like one of like, honestly, his value, he has over $100 million. This kid that I played video game with, simply because like he made some website. All it takes is an idea. So here's some examples from sports. I love sports. We got a sports crowd here. But Clemson, what they do, and part of the reason why they win so many national championships is because sometimes you can't practice, right? Let's just say it's raining or, it's, so like what they actually do is they use virtual reality, and then they have their players put on these goggles, and then they show their players like scenes and things so that they can get really, really, really accustomed to like defensive formations and things. And so that's part of their comparative advantage. No one else is doing this. This is part of the reason why they win so many national championships, among other things. Do y'all know what this is?
Data center?
It's not a data center.
Amazon warehouse.
Yeah, that's very good. It's an Amazon warehouse. So part of the reason why Amazon's crushing their competition is that they're more efficient. And when you're that big, economies of scale matters a lot, right? And part of why they're so efficient is that they have lower marginal cost, right? So this is the Amazon warehouse. They got robots that are automated. They're just shuffling all of these things around, and that ultimately lowers their cost, right? But if, let's just say that the total cost for Target is like 12%, and Amazon, because they have all of this automation and robotics, is 9%. But if my cost is like $10 billion, that makes a huge difference over like a 5-year time horizon for my business. So ultimately, all of these small things is part of a company's competitive advantage. Over here, Facebook was founded by 4 guys. They all dropped out of college. Once again, this is really only possible in tech. If they went into any other industry, they wouldn't have been as successful as they were. And every single one of these guys is a billionaire now. Literally only possible in tech. If you go to look up like Wall Street Journal or like any sort of like Google any article of new billionaires that were self-made, 99% of them are in the technology industry, simply because low barrier to entry and because tech is massively scalable. No other industry allows you to do this. And the same thing happens at GitLab. So after 4 years of the company's founding, there was only 9 people. Part of our company story was they actually lived out of like one house, and they had like a GitLab truck that they rode around on. So I imagine that all of these guys have a ton of equity in the company, if you think about it. So part of the reason why they're so motivated to be successful is because of their equity. All right, so let's talk about the different components of the tech industry. There's applications and data. That's obviously simplification. We are not talking about the hardware side. We're really just talking about the software side because most of our clients are in the development side of things. So we'll talk about applications. What I mean by applications are web applications like Facebook, Google, YouTube. We'll talk about video streaming applications, Netflix. We'll talk about games, things like that. Fundamentally, what they do is they provide a service for a price, right? So a typical standard business is that I have an electrician come to my house. I pay him $200 to do something. For some sort of e-commerce business, it's the same principle, except for it's like a virtual delivery of some sort of service, right? So Netflix, I pay $20 a month, and then I get the ability to stream movies, right? Data, that's the second half of things. Everything that we do on the internet is stored, repackaged, and sold. If you think about Google Chrome, Google Chrome has 85% of the web browser market, and it cost Google hundreds of millions of dollars to have made Google Chrome, which is a product that they fundamentally give away for free, right? Google Chrome costs $0 to use and to get. And the reason why is because Google Chrome allows Google to have all of your data. And that's how Google makes all their money. Google makes almost all of their revenue off of your data, right? So, you know, it's just kind of crazy how much money there is in Google. And this is the reason why, like, if I start looking at like engagement rings, and all of a sudden in my mailbox, I get like a million things for engagement rings. Like if I start looking at like, if I buy a new house, I get millions of things all of a sudden for like lawn mowing services and things like that. It's simply because my data is being repackaged and sold all of the time. This happens like literally every single day. All right, so different types of applications by business. This is really important to understand. It's super important to understand your customer business, because this is ultimately what they care about, right? So I always tell all the SDRs here that we bring on, like, we need to understand their business, because that's ultimately what they care about. They want them to be successful because that's ultimately their job security, right? Different types of businesses. You can have like a virtual marketplace. So as opposed to like a farmer's market, it's just a virtual marketplace like Amazon. You have what they call software as a service, which is basically, if you want to use Google Documents, then you need to buy G Suite. Netflix is an example of a software as a service. GitLab, we offer a software as a service. You have games like Candy Crush. You have communities like Facebook. Facebook has over 1 billion users, or around 20% of the global population is on Facebook, right? Entertainment, things like Reddit, and ultimately tools. And that's the part of this is like the industry that we're in. All right, so now that we have a little bit of understanding of our customers and the people that we talk to on a day-to-day basis, it's really important that we understand what they care about. And it's basically an arms race between all of these e-businesses. And one of the things that's really important to understand is that all of the time it's a winners take all market, right? So when Facebook became successful, MySpace and all of these other like, you know, virtual like community platforms, they got crushed, right? Facebook really got the entire market. And so our customers are really cognizant of this. The reason why a lot of engineers are so stressed out is because they have to work on so many things all the time. So how does an e-business win, right? So obviously everything's a competitive marketplace. How you win is you have more features, which is my website can do more things. I have a better user experience. My website's faster, or it's more secure. It really only comes down to 4 categories. And so I'm gonna start unpacking a little bit about how we can help people get more competitive advantage in terms of their e-business. I want to use an example of a virtual storefront. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And one of the things I want to say is literally an arms race. So Google is constantly looking at what other people are doing, like Amazon and stuff like that. And they're just like trying to build out additional features and things all of the time, because they understand that it is a winners take all market. When Facebook was successful, they were really cognizant of what Google was doing with Google+. And people copy each other's features all the time. And right now, our primary competitor, which is GitHub, they're literally copying our roadmap. Like everything that we are doing, they're about a year to 9 months behind, but they're catching up pretty quickly. And it's something that we really need to be aware of. All right, so what do you all see in, tell me about this restaurant. Like if you're walking by it, like what would you think and what emotions would it create in you?
Wait, that's a restaurant?
What else?
My childhood. It looks like books or games or something.
Is it fun? Like if you were visiting a place, would you want to go in the store?
Yeah, I'd be intrigued, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of stuff. I'm not a big shopper, so maybe I'd like to window shop.
Yeah,
Yeah, at
but
least look
like,
and see what it is.
yeah. So all those things that y'all said is super important. And I think that it just goes to show that like, if you were a business 20 years ago, and all of this stuff is super thought out because you know that your revenue and the amount of money that you take in and your market share and ultimately like your survivability is very dependent on how presentable you are, right? So things that you think about is my store in the right place in town? Am I designing my storefront to look appealing to the people that I want to walk in? So it seems like this store is probably for young families and for kids. So what do? They surround it by flowers and then they make it super colorful. If a kid was walking by, this store, then they'd probably be like, mommy, like, let me go inside here, right? So it's things that people think about. And this is the exact same thing with every single e-business. Amazon has like a large number of people that do psychological and sociological and anthropological research simply on who are my customers like and how can I design my website to be beautiful and appealing so that they want to go inside of it and buy our stuff. So literally, like, if Amazon appeals to me and Target's website isn't as cool or even just like beautiful, then that could be 10% of sales, right? So it makes a really, really big difference. And so Facebook and Amazon and all of these companies, they literally hire like PhD sociologists and like study human nature and figure out like how I can make this virtual marketplace experience as appealing as possible, which is all part of their competitive advantage. So let's talk about the 4 things that we mentioned, features. So I'm going to pick on Amazon. So Amazon 15 years ago, you could buy books on it. Then 10 years ago, you could buy like a lot of different things. You could get like kitchen stuff. And in the last 2 years, just take a look at how much more roadmap they have. So they can sell arts and crafts with Etsy. They own Etsy. They now have grocery options with Whole Foods. They have entertainment with Prime Video. They also, if you have kids that play gaming, then you probably know what Twitch is. They own Twitch, which is the largest like gaming service like in the world right now. Smart home with Alexa, and then services. So you can get contractors and electricians through them. They're literally going after every single market segment. And so if they can do this more effectively than Target and their competitors, then ultimately because of economies of scale, they're going to crush everyone. And that's fundamentally what Amazon tries to do, is try to get way more features than everyone else. And then you just go to Amazon for everything. It's just ingrained into you to get stuff off of Amazon, and they just win, right? That's the reason why they're able to grow 20% year over year for so long. User experience with Tumblr. Have you all ever used this site before?
I used to have one a long, long time ago.
Yeah. So what did you use it for?
I just would post pictures and use it to find computer backgrounds and pretty things to make collages out of.
Yeah. So like Tumblr is this website that people typically post artwork. So Tumblr understands that our ability to survive and to drive money depends on our ability to attract people who are into art. So if you just take a look at how this website's designed, it's completely built to be fun and engaging for an artsy person. So here's the main screen. You can see it's literally displaying artwork. It's beautiful. It's interactive. If I scroll down, it's fun. There's animation to it. It's also simple enough for someone who's like 16 to understand. If I scroll down again, it's once again very colorful, very interactive. And so this is part of how they attract clients. Just like if I were a brick and mortar business, I want to attract young families by making it colorful and having lots of stuff in front. With Tumblr, it's the exact same thing, except for it's a website. And so that's part of their competitive advantage. If this site weren't as pretty and interactive, then they would have less sales and ultimately their business wouldn't be as successful. So they probably hire like all sorts of like graphic designers to like come up with this stuff. All right, in terms of speed, this is something that a lot of people don't think about, but it's super, super, super important for e-businesses. Some e-businesses win and lose simply because of speed. And it's very important to understand this. So I'm just give you 3 things, right? So Pinterest increased signups are, we can replace the word signups with new customers, our, like user base, which is ultimately customers. They increased it by 15% after they reduced their website wait times by 40%. So if I invest in my engineering, I get 15% more customer base. How much more revenue does that matter for my business over a 3-year time horizon, right? British Broadcasting Corporation found that they lost 10% of users, and keep in mind, they make money off of advertisement revenue, right? So if you're losing users, then you're losing your revenue stream. So they found that they lost 10% of their users for every additional second that their website took to load. That's a big deal for them, right? Because ultimately that's how they make money. Google found that 53% of mobile website visits were abandoned if it took longer than 3 seconds to load. All this being said is the customers that we serve, part of the reason why they care about having all this really great tech is that it influences their business in a direct manner. Every CTO of an e-commerce business understands this. If you look at this is the annual financials for Amazon.com. As you can see in 2019, they were at around $300 billion, up 50 bill from 2018, right? So just think about any of these things. Increasing signups by 15%, losing 10% of users for a simple investing in your technology. So the difference between 15% new users for Amazon would be over $10 billion, right? So it's something that they're really, really, really care about. All of these companies, the winners, have great technology, and all of the small guys that are trying to carve out a niche market or try to do something that's a little bit like less, then these are things that they care about. All right. I've just been rushing through everything. What do y'all think about this stuff so far before I jump into the next section?
This is great.
Cool. I'll skip through some of the hardware section because I know that y'all have a background in hardware. Y'all know what these are, right?
Servers.
Yeah, exactly. So every
Give it away
website,
at the top there.
yeah, every single website, you need computers to basically run it. Each of these rectangular things is one individual computer. And then so Google has over 100,000 of these machines. There are around 2% of all of the electricity consumption in the United States is for servers. So like literally, if you think about it, there's more electricity that's spent on servers than like on all of the streetlights in our entire country, which is kind of crazy to think about. So servers are kept in data centers, and data centers are distributed all across the country, right? And part of the reason why they're distributed so much is that if I am a small shop and my data center is in Boulder, Colorado, and someone wants to go check out my website in Orlando, then it takes probably about 1 to 1.5 seconds to get a response. And then for that data to come back for your website to load will take additional 1 to 1.5 seconds. So that's a 3-second load time, which is ultimately not going to be successful if I want my e-business to really be selling to people in Florida, right? So for Amazon and all Netflix, what they do is they have data centers in virtually every single city. They have all of these engineers that like do a bunch of super complicated math and are super high paid. And what they do is they figure out like, all right, here's my customer base. Here's how I distribute my workload so that like everyone's happy and that like, you know, we're performing fundamentally our web service for our customers. Do y'all know what I know? So like there's a new paradigm. This is just review for Maggie, at least I know. There's a new paradigm in computing. So it used to be everyone owns their own data center, but now people are renting out servers and data centers. Megan, is this a review for you? If it is, then I'm gonna just skip over the slide.
I could use a refresher.
Okay, cool. So it used to be that like, if I'm a small company, then I build a data center. And as opposed to having like a big building like this, then in my office, I have 5 of these computers on top of each other, right? And in our startup world, that's not really great because those 5 machines cost me $20,000 for a startup that may not exist and is existing off of venture capital funding. And I only have funding for 2 years. So it's like, I don't really want a capital investment. Really what I want to do is if there's some way that I can use someone else's stuff and pay them like, you know, $200 a month, then I'd much rather do that than shell out 20K, considering I don't know if my business is going to exist in 2 years because I'm a startup, right? So there's a new paradigm in computing called cloud computing, and this has really taken off in the last 5 years. This is something that is extremely lucrative. And the whole idea with it is, as opposed to me owning my own equipment, then why don't I rent someone else's? So now Amazon owns this building and I just rent out 2 machines that are inside of it. And the reason why that's good, as opposed to having a one-time capital transaction, then I have like a marginal cost, so like a monthly fee, which could be better for my business, because it's just, I don't want like long-term like investment if like I'm a startup. And the other reason why people like this is that it's easier for them, right? If I'm a startup, I really want to work my business plan. I want to be hiring the right people for my team. I want to be building out channel. I really don't want to be like spending all this time into investing in like gear, right? If I can pay someone else to do it, it's the same principle of like, why do I gotta like, if I want to do plumbing in my house, then I have to buy like 5 different tools and stuff, like, and figure out how they work and everything else like that. I'd much rather just pay someone else to do it a lot of the time. So let's just talk about Amazon. Can you all see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna draw y'all a graph. And on this axis is time. So January is here, February is here, June, July, November, December. So this is time on the x-axis. And on the y, it's the amount of like compute, or like the number of computers that you need for like any sort of website, right? So what Amazon found is that during a given year, using historical data, people are bored in the winter and they're looking at buying stuff a lot. But then once spring comes around, people go back outside, they're not visiting their site as much. But then summer starts happening, it's too hot, so people want to like buy new stuff, whatever. And then there's a spike in like right before school starts. And then,
Ah!
Yeah, just, I don't know how to erase in this. So we'll pretend that this doesn't happen. And then like towards Christmas, there's like a huge spike, right? So we know if we expect this as our maximum number of computers that we need to build in some buffer, right? So let's build in some buffer over here, simply because if my website's being really like slow, then I lose billions of dollars in the Christmas months. So I need to build in some buffer. And so so they bought all of these machines for this much, and that's historically what they've done for a long time. But then what they realized is, oh wait, half of these machines are sitting around not doing anything for the vast majority of the year, right? Like literally they just sit around and are collecting dust, and I only have them because of these 2 months of a year. So Amazon comes around and says, well, why don't I just sell out all of this extra like computer capacity for other people? And that is the birth of what we call the public cloud. So once again, the story is that Amazon was the first real public cloud provider. They realized, hey, we got all this extra capacity, which is this area here. We don't really need to, it's not doing anything. It's just like depreciating. So why don't we just like sell computer usage to other people during this part of the year and make money off of it? And so if you take a look at this chart over here, this is the market share of the public cloud. This is a huge, huge, huge market. Amazon, so like, have you ever heard of the War Cloud project?
No.
Okay, so like around 3 years ago, the Pentagon basically said, we want to move to the cloud. And they solicited all of these different businesses to try to sell to them. Guess how large that contract was? And just reference, Maggie, Red Hat's annual revenue is $3 billion. So guess how large that contract was? It was a 10-year contract, including like R&D services and everything.
I'm sure it's way above $3 billion.
It was a $10 billion contract to use the public cloud. So what ended up happening was Amazon and Microsoft were the last 2 people, and the Pentagon actually decided to go with Microsoft. And so Amazon was the first person to do it. They have first movers advantage. That's the reason why their market share is so high. Microsoft came on strong second, and Google is a distant third. from an engineering perspective, the story of these three companies is really interesting. It makes sense that Amazon does really well because they're first movers advantage, right? Google actually has the best cloud out of all three of these from an engineering perspective, but their business strategy sucks. And so that's the reason. It's honestly like almost like a joke to me that like they have the best tech, but because their business and channel isn't developed, then like they literally have like, if they had better business development, they'd have like they'd have like billions more dollars in revenue, but they don't. Microsoft was their stuff is actually like, it's gotten way better, but historically it was really bad. The reason why they were able to grow so quickly is simply because Microsoft is really good at sales. And they already had all of these relationships with basically every single business in the Fortune 500 and the Fortune 1000 because everyone uses Microsoft Office, right? So they're already getting the meetings. Then they come in and say, hey, for your renewal coming up, if you want to move some stuff to Azure Cloud, we'll give you 50% off for your first year. And then they got massive market share because of this. So just the story of these three again, Amazon's first mover advantage. That's why they're a leader. Microsoft leveraged their business advantage and their business relationships, and they've caught on really strong. They just won the $10 billion War Cloud deal, which is one of the biggest tech deals in history. Like it is literally one of the biggest deals in history. And Google actually has the best tech, but the story behind them is because their business development isn't that good, then they're a distant third. Auto scaling applications, that's something that I do want to talk about real quick. So let me just go back to this slide. So it used to be that like if I'm a small shop, then I might need 5 of these machines, and one of these machines holds all of my code. One does authentication, one does my security stuff, and 3 of them run my website or something like that, right? And the problem with this is that it's static, right? So if my website gets all of a sudden more users and more people are visiting it, then I have to buy another one of these things, install all the software on it, configure it into change my networking, change things like called load balancers, and then all of a sudden that like it works better. But obviously that takes a lot of time, right? So it's going to take me 2 weeks to get the hardware. It has to go through all the budget approvals, then the engineers start working on it. It might take them a month, and then so if I have an unexpected spike in usage for my website, then I can't respond 2 months later, because that's a bad user experience for the next 2 months, right? So what auto scaling is the ability to scale up and down servers. So if I'm renting out server space in this big building that has 20,000 of these machines, then I can actually create an application that like, if people start using it more, then it's smart enough to know, hey, give me another one of these machines. And if people aren't using it, then it's like, all right, well, I'm going to save you some money. And now you're not getting charged for any of these machines. So that's how applications auto scale. The reason why this is important is because GitLab auto scales. And that's one of our fundamental value propositions, is that we can scale up and down if you have our SaaS offering. Or if you have, actually, let me clear up the messaging there. We can scale up and down, period. Depending on how you like install it.
Chris,
Yes.
how does this have a lot of similarities or some similarities with OpenStack with Red Hat with the scaling features?
OpenStack is something that allows you to build out a cloud. So so it's like, if I want the ability to scale machines up and down and stuff like that, I need to buy 10 of these machines and install some software on it that's going to allow it to like create like VMs and stuff like that. So that's what OpenStack does. Yeah, so you need something like OpenStack to have like cloud, like how you get this cloud like software like abilities is that you need some sort of application to manage everything. And so that's what OpenStack is.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
That's a really great question. Okay, so now that we talked about the business side of things, we understand what motivates our customers. Now we also understand why some people win and lose, and we talked about the hardware side of things. We got to talk about the data side of things. So there's really 2 fundamental types of data. One is with people. Everything that you do is tracked, logged, analyzed. Like literally, if you are on Facebook and you start looking at a certain person's posts and they see that like you're hovering over this image for 2 seconds, well, I'm going to show you more of these images, right? That's how advertising works. And then they understand what you like, what you don't like. They understand, you know, if you stop watching this video, okay, well, this video was about baking. Maybe this person's not interested in baking. I watched a Great British Baking Show, so
It's a good show.
yeah. There's an American version that I think that they're making, which is going to be fun to watch. They'll like Americans will cuss more and stuff. I don't know.
I think they
But,
already did one, didn't they?
I don't know. I want to look this up at the end of this now. But yeah, okay. So the reason why your data is money is fundamentally marketers want your data so that they can target you with specific advertisements, right? So it's worth money to marketers. We spend a lot of money for services, understanding who our customers are and what they like and what they do and stuff. It's the same principle as that you're buying data. All right, so let's talk about the business of data with things. What I basically mean by this is Google Maps, they literally bought 300 trucks, put them cameras on top of them, got them painted specific ways. So the unit cost of that's maybe $50,000. And then they had them drive for 4 years across every single road in the United States. What is the business value of them doing that? Because that's a ton of time. That might have cost them like several $100 million to do, right? And the reason why is because they wanted street data for the entire United States. And now they're selling it and making money off of it. So over here, you can, oh, I wanted to have one more thing. Have you ever been here, Maggie?
It's so good.
Yeah, this is a restaurant, Megan, that it like wins a bunch of rewards and stuff, and it's like Asian fusion food. But if I scroll down over here, you can see there's Yelp in here, right? So, or not, there's Google Maps in here, right? So even though I'm on Yelp.com, somehow Google Maps got embedded into Yelp.com. So it's obviously illegal to just steal that and copy and paste it. They embedded it somehow. And then there's a business agreement beyond this, right? And so if you take a look at Google's actual stuff, they charge for this, right? So the pricing to get their maps is $2 per 1,000 requests and $7 per 1,000 requests if you want more interactive maps. So that means every time I go to this Yelp page, if I were to reload this site 1,000 times, then Yelp would have to pay Google $2 for this data. And so what Google wanted to do is let's create the best map service for the entire planet, literally have views on every single map, have pictures for everything, and then now we can just sell our data to the rest of the internet. And that's fundamentally what they're doing. So that's how people make money off of data of things, right? So it could be events, it could be online transactions, it could be, you know, even geographic data. And the last thing is to get this to work, you need to have what we call APIs. And so what an API is it's an alternative version of a website that allows websites to connect together. So over here is Yelp. How it got this map wasn't that it copied and pasted an image. It was because there's a thing behind Yelp called an API that actually talked to the Google Maps API and downloaded the data. So this is GitLab. Let me just show you how like an API in action. So there's also a GitLab API. So over here, the web address is gitlab.com/thing/thing, right? And if I go over here to this alternative endpoint, gitlab.com/API/v4projects7746, which corresponds to this, right? So this is 7746. This is how I know that these two endpoints are saying the same thing. Then I get the API endpoint that corresponds to this. And every single thing on this website is in this blob of text over here, which obviously is a little bit hard to read, but I'll prove it to you. So it says ID is 7746. We already saw that it was 7746. Description, source for HTTP about gitlab.com. This repro project is for public-facing marketing website of GitLab, including docs in the handbook. I would go over here, then I find out this is literally what this is, right? source for GitLab.com, this read is the exact same text. So it's an alternative. Once again, your API is giving you an alternative version of displaying this information. And the reason why this allows for integrations as opposed to the graphical version is because this is way simpler and this is smaller. So downloading this amount of data is about 1% the amount of data than downloading this amount of data. It's probably even less than that. So to get all of these e-businesses to hook up, you need an API. And the reason why e-businesses want API is fundamentally the more connected your service is, the more that you can sell your data, right? So one, Google makes money off of this immediately, directly. And then also it increases visibility of its fundamental service by having it exposed in another website, right? Which also helps them as well. They're basically just like increasing their market share and their visibility for their service by allowing everyone else to embed their stuff in there. APIs allow this to work. All right. Yeah, then the last point that I really want to make is every application has an API. So Facebook has an API, Salesforce has an API, Google has an API, everyone has an API. And the reason, once again, is because if you're an e-business, you want to sell your data and you want other things to be able to integrate with your tool. So let's all tie this back together. I know that this got a little bit more abstract, but what's the fundamental story that we're in right now, right? What is our customer journey and what do our customers care about? Well, what you actually hear after having talked to just like thousands of customers over the year is honestly that like people feel behind, right? And the reason why is because technology changes rapidly and the rate of change is only getting faster. What I basically mean by this is that let's just say that I'm some sort of e-business. I've invested 30% of my entire budget in getting really great website, super fast, super responsive, super trendy. My website is going to be obsolete in about 6 months to a year. In 3 years, it will have no relevance whatsoever. In about 1 month, it will be insecure to hackers. So it's a really big problem. And most people feel behind. When you talk to a bunch of customers, and I talk to all these customers and I ask them, hey, are you happy with the state of, your X, Y, and Z of your e-business, like the technical components? Almost all the time they say like, no, I'm not happy with like this and this. We're behind here. We really need to go fix this. And they're not entirely sure how to do it. So it's a struggle to keep up with all of these things. In terms of features, Lyft versus Uber. If one develops this thing that's useful, some feature, and then the other one doesn't, over the next 6 months, that could result in 5 to 10% market share loss, right? User experience, part of it is that like your website trendiness changes with your target population. So like this scrolling interactive view, it's been cool for like around 2 years, but it's not going to be cool at some point. And then when it's not cool, then you need to redevelop your website to be like attractive to your client base. In terms of speed, that changes all the time. Security, obviously like new vulnerabilities were happening every day. Recently, Twitter got hacked, right? Around 100 very famous people had their Twitter accounts hacked. What effect does that have on Twitter's business? Maybe 10% less sales in the next year? It's really non-trivial for them. So these are things that all businesses feel behind. So where do we fit in? GitLab is an extremely powerful suite of tools that allows customers to get ahead of their competitors. That's our basic value proposition. We know that you have problems with your technology. We know that there's things that could be improved. We are a tool that allows you to systematically become more efficient, deliver better products faster, and reduce security risk. And that is almost what like 100% of everyone out there, they want these three things. And this is fundamentally what we sell. So obviously that's like a really high level. In the next couple of sessions, we're going to start unpacking exactly how we allow customers to become more efficient, deliver better products, and reduce security risk. But fundamentally, that's what we do. Okay, cool. So that was 15 minutes runtime. I have 10 minutes if we want to talk about your like issue if you want to do that now, or like we can also stop. And obviously I kind of wanted to rush things because they're to make time at the end, and we didn't have time at the end. But what do y'all think? Like, was this some new information? Was this helpful?
Definitely. And I think it was super engaging, right? You had a lot of relevant content to be able to refer back to. So I've been in a lot of technical trainings that are just words, phrases, all these things. And you made it easy to follow along what I was actually like interested and engaged. Whereas other times it'd be like 15 minutes and it'd be like, oh, snooze fest.
Yeah. It's like when people are like, let me talk about the microservices architecture and how we can fit into the thing. And you're like, okay, right.
Yep, you lost me. See ya.
Oh, I
Okay.
agree. Great, Chris. It's nice the way that you articulate things and you tell a story with it, because it's not only easier to resonate with us, but it'll help us with our reps or with conversations with customers and just being aware of how to present something in a different way. So that's definitely appreciated.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, I don't know what y'all's schedules are like, and I don't know what y'all's next meeting, when y'all's next meeting are at, but I'm happy to work with y'all on, you know, your Slack, your GitHub, your GitLab issue. If in the remaining 7 minutes, or we can schedule another time. Just let me know.
Do you think
Can
that's
we
enough to do that?
Yeah. Can we schedule sometime? I feel like there's a lot we need to go over.
I'd
Okay.
love that.
Sure. Okay, I'll go find. Are we talking about like a 30-minute slot or like an hour slot or something?
Probably an hour.
Yeah, if you either that or 2 30-minute blocks, whatever's easier for
Yeah.
you. Just so we can. I'm sure we'll.
What do y'all think about Friday? We're not generally supposed to give meetings on Friday, but if that's like the only, I'm looking at our calendars right now. It's like Swiss cheese. It's like the only time that it's really gonna work.
I'm fine with Friday.
Me too. Plus, technically, it's a training, right? It's not really a meeting.
Cool. Okay, I'll send out an invite. And I'll see you tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank
so
you,
much.
Chris.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Bye.